Cheers guys, Epix here. Welcome to VR Show episode 15 and a cold one here in Halifax at the moment, guys. Another tardy episode. Things are going to get back on track. Real life jobs, the hunt that is, and of course Red Dead Redemption and a bit of a needed break. All kind of boiling over at the same time. But things are going to get back on track. What a show today. We are going to talk about Valve's new headset. Lots of speculation, some data trickling our way over the last almost 2 weeks now. I want to talk about that in the VR chat segment. Also, all the latest VR news, current events, and of course games coming at you in the Roundup and XP segments. Also a good time, guys, because I want to talk in this intro about Inxile and the acquisition. So if you're new to the channel, all these episodes are time-stamped. Go to the description, find the timestamp. If you're not into a particular topic, you can jump on right over it to a topic of more interest to you. So if you're still here, let's talk Inxile for a couple of minutes. And the reason I want to chat about this is a company that's created VR content. Of course, Brian Fargo and his Inxile developing The Mage's Tale, which was a decent polished VR game. It wasn't what I was looking for. I'm still looking for a from the ground up VR RPG with lots of itemization, character customization, you know, the works, right? That it wasn't, but it was okay. Now I mention this because it comes on the heels of last week's topic, which of course was acquisitions. And we talked about a honeymoon period, and here's Brian announcing that Microsoft has acquired Inxile. And you might be thinking, wait a second, honeymoon period. He's gone through this before with his previous company, the award-winning Interplay Productions, the company behind Bard's Tale, behind Wasteland, the game that started the whole post-apocalyptic RPG thing in computers and consoles to begin with. He loses that company, talks as recent as a month ago about even hoping to purchase that company back, and here we are, acquired by Microsoft. But it kind of makes sense why. Now, this is pure speculation on my part. Brian has been, and rather him and his company, subsisting off of crowdfunding mostly. So when Tim had his adventure game, and a lot of drama behind that, but it did create a resurgence, a resurgence for more traditional type games, turn-based RPGs on computers. The problem with most of those Kickstarters is they tended to be woefully under realistic budget. That's partially how Tim and his company got into trouble. Brian, of course, riding on that coattail, bringing about some pretty damn good games. Wasteland 2, for example. And I know I've been negative about Kickstarters. I back them myself. I just tend to back more sure bets than the technically more advanced Kickstarters, which tend to be the ones that fail. So there's Wasteland, of course, the more recent Bard's Tale 4, which I really haven't kind of gotten into that much yet, and Torment Tides of Numenera. So lots of Kickstarters, more than that even. The problem with that, though, and remember, he's promised additional VR content for the future, and again, speculation, is when you're under budget like that with these titles, realistic budget, probably double what these guys are asking, really, to keep programmers, designers employed. The problem is you don't want to lay them off. And I do believe him when he said, look, I had idle teams sitting around, because he'd start a second Kickstarter before the first had even been delivered. But designers, writers, that side of the development process does sit idle after a point. They hand off and they begin working on the next title. But I do think there was a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul, meaning they were relying on cash flow for a second game to help pay for the first. The problem with that is it catches up with you eventually. I do think that's what happened with Inxile, and it got to a point where when the sales aren't good, like with Bard's Tale 4, how the hell are you going to sell that next Kickstarter when you haven't even fully paid for that one yet, and sales, which you really rely on post-launch to kind of even everything out. So that's what I think happened there. I do hope the honeymoon period is a long one with Inxile. I do want them to create VR RPG content. I'll be the first in line, I swear it, to purchase it. So Brian, wish you guys the best of luck over in Inxile. Hope it works out with the big bad Microsoft. We'll see. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that in the comments below. And with that said, guys, let's jump into the next segment, this week's VR news and current events in VR Roundup. Wanted to share this with you guys right off the bat. Longtime viewer on the channel, K-Locker, built himself a wingsuit simulator rig, and you got to check this out. It just goes to show you how damn versatile PVC piping can be. And of course, those damn yoga balls, which I can't seem to get to work for anything for the life of me. This looks like a good application for them for sure. You can see him in this video here enjoying his simulator rig with the game Rush, which of course available on Steam VR from developer Binary Mill for both Vive and Rift. A game that's generally gotten pretty decent reviews, mostly positive on Steam VR. So I'm going to have the link for this full video if you want to check that out in the description below. Well done, K-Locker. Well done indeed. SKETCHFAB, which hosts user-created 3D VR model content, announcing that they've passed 1 billion page views. Now, they didn't get into specifics, whether those are unique or duplicate. Either way, it is an accomplishment, especially in the field of VR, so very, very cool. Grats, SKETCHFAB. YouTube VR, which has been available on other platforms like the Rift and the Vive for quite some time, finally coming to the Oculus Go. If you have an Oculus Go and you've been waiting for this, get on over to Oculus Home where you can download this app and get in on some YouTube VR action. In this next story, coming a little late, but better late than never, Valve HMD for VR pics leaked? Well, if you're asking me, and I talk about it in the VR chat segment, I think it was a bit of a purposeful leak, but interesting nonetheless. This purports to be an HMD capable of anything from 135 to 150 degree field of view. Again, more on this in the VR chat segment. Here's the type of issue I probably last saw in the 1990s with the Cyrix processor and specific hardware. Well, owners of the HTC Vive wireless adapter that have an AMD Ryzen processor have for the last few months been talking about incompatibility issues. AMD unable to solve the issue, taking the enormous step, a bit of a white flag of surrender this week, of offering full refunds to owners of an AMD Ryzen. Let's hope the two sides working together can resolve this and figure out what the incompatibility is. Well, we talked about the acquisition honeymoon period in last week's episode and a little bit in the intro on this episode. Looks like the honeymoon period officially over for the company once known as Oculus VR Limited Liability Corporation. They are officially, as of this week, now known as Facebook Technologies LLC, a subsidiary of Facebook Incorporated. Sony announcing that they will not be attending 2019's E3 event. Now, it's one thing to lose a software developer like Electronic Arts, but when you start losing Nintendos and Sonys of the world, it's going to have a massive impact on your event. Well, we'll have to wait to see for this 2019 event what kind of an impact Sony's absence will be, but I think it will definitely be felt. Hopefully, we're still going to see a lot of Sony content announced from the various game devs at E3 though. Here's a game I can definitely relate to living on the East Coast on the shores of the Atlantic. Age of Sail from Google, which is a short story in VR set in the early 1900s, centers around two characters, William Avery, an old sailor set adrift on the open sea, and Lara, a young girl who's fallen overboard from a luxury steamliner vessel. There is a 2D version available, but of course you'll want the full VR one, available either through Steam or Vive port for both the Vive and the Rift. Echo VR, featuring the same type of zero-G as in previous titles like Echo Arena. It's going to support 15 players and 5v5 private matches with 5 slots available for spectators as well. Your team facing off against the competition in zero gravity, a clash of robotic glory as you glide, boost, and punch your way to scoring goals in a breathtaking virtual arena. The game is available via the Oculus store for $9.99 US. If, like me, you're a fan of North American mythos, well, you have to check out Crow the Legend, the third VR project from startup Baobab. You play a role of one of the personified creatures of the forest, handling a sudden cold snap. The game available for the Oculus Go and Rift, as well as the Gear VR. All right, let's get into this VR chat segment. I want to talk about the Valve head-mounted display. Of course, this has been talk of the VR town for the last almost 2 weeks now. Right off the bat, I'm going to say I think they were purposely leaked. These are high-resolution, PCB quality, and others have mentioned that, photos. In other words, high enough resolution, you can see the writing on the various chips on the board in those photos. Blow it up, they're easy to see. I believe it was purposely leaked. Whether it was or not doesn't change that it's more than likely Valve is working on a head-mounted display. They certainly haven't denied it, and there's really no reason to believe they're not. So let's speculate a little bit, because we've heard some variation in these specs and a bit of a range discrepancy. Field of view, for example, 135 to 150 degree field of view. If you remember the Pimax with what it calls its kind of normal field of view, which I believe is 145, they're kind of in that sweet zone. A resolution, and again, discrepancy here, everything from matching Vive Pro to slightly more than Vive Pro. It's got that frontal insertion slot, a lot of interest and speculation on what the hell that's going to be used for, the front-facing cameras, how it's going to handle its tracking. All in all, a lot of speculation. But if you think about it, it makes sense. The relationship that they've had with HTC from day one was one of varying expertise. Valve, for their part, the software masters. Sure, they've done hardware, Steam Machine and some other things. They haven't been so successful, but primarily they are the software experts. Going into a partnership with HTC, the hardware experts, right? The phone people. But you can see both a little restless with that relationship, wanting a bit more of the other's pie, HTC via Vive port, and of course, Valve via this. Wanting a bigger stake in VR now, coming into a pretty damn crowded marketplace. That's the interesting thing. We have, let's go through this here. Pimax, right? We've got Samsung with their devices, the rest of the Windows mixed reality devices. We've got Vive, we've got Rift, we've got Oculus Go, Quest coming up. Several models of some of these, like the Pimax. We've got Gear VR, which is on life support, but still kicking around. Are they all going to make it to 2019? Hell no. So by the time they launch 2019, possibly 2020, probably a lot smaller marketplace than we're seeing now, because there will be attrition. My personal guess, half of the Windows mixed reality units don't make it into 2019. They just don't have the sales. They're probably not losing a ton because marketing has been pretty piss poor. They're not proven to me that they've spent a lot of money on their VR solutions, but they're not all going to make it into the future. So that is all really interesting. And of course, Valve develops this they have the software catalog and back catalog already in place. Think about that for a second. You launch a new console, unless you have backwards compatibility, and consoles have flirted with that, but then you're dealing with a lot of last gen, right? With the non-tethered solutions or tethered solutions, you're having an evolution as you go along. So you're able to tap into that evolving catalog of games. And as soon as this headset comes to market, it's got that whole back and current catalog to draw from. That's a pretty enviable position for anyone. Either you got to be compatible with an existing catalog or you develop your own. And developing your own right now in the size of the VR market, you don't want to go that route. You've got to go with an existing catalog like Steam, like Oculus. Partner with those. You're not going to make it on your own. Not a chance in hell. So it's interesting how they're going to be launching this device, how successful it will be. I'll tell you what, though. They've piqued my interest to the point I've already held off on the Pimax for a bit. I want to see more reviews and hands-on experiences from those outside of our VR circle to really kind of get a more unbiased view of the Pimax product. The Valve one, that's probably one that I would purchase if I am confident it works with the existing ecosystem, it's compatible with all the games, and it brings some new innovation to the table. Even though it's 1.5 gen, it's a pretty damn interesting device to have out there because it gives you that little bit of a bump up with field of view and resolution, but still tethers you to that software catalog. Let me know what you guys think. What are your thoughts? Would you purchase that device? Are you instead just going to pass on everything that's out there, truly wait for second gen, the Oculus Quest? Where are you guys going? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Guys, with that said, please hit that like button if you like this video. Leave me a comment below. And have a kick-arse week. And we'll catch you guys again next time. As always, cheers.